Chapter 249, The Assassination. Eileen clamped her mouth shut and angrily looked at the thin, smiling face of the ambassador, with a touch of terror. Backlund stretched out his right hand, which was covered in a plume of orange flames that danced silently. He took 2 steps forward, making a gesture as if he was pressing his palm against Eileen's skin. This made Eileen think of the descriptions in many novels in which cruel interrogators would use red-hot iron to brand their target's body, bringing about an extremely painful experience. No, I can't be that brutal to such a beautiful lady. Backlund suddenly stopped his outstretched right palm and chuckled softly. He shook suddenly, turning the orange flame into a long red whip. The long whip ignited the air around it, which took on the form of thorns. How? Backlund lashed his flaming whip at Eileen, burning her clothes and leaving a dark mark on her skin. Her face contorted as she screamed. "Who sent you?" Backlund asked again in a gentle voice. Eileen's lips quivered a few times before she finally opened them. It was... As Backlund subconsciously listened for the answer, his eyes suddenly turned bloodshot. "Oh no." Backlund jerked back and rolled to the ground. In the spot where he had been standing, a flame rose up and formed a wall of fire. Splat! 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 Rain like blood and flesh splattered against the wall and produced sizzling sounds. Some of them penetrated the flame, leaving a thin trail of blood on the ground. At the end of this path was the Inta's ambassador, Backlund, who had stood up once again. He saw that Eileen's abdomen had been torn open and 2 arms wrapped in viscous liquid were sticking out from inside. With a sudden push of the 2 arms, a figure drilled its way out from the belly of the beautiful Eileen. It was covered in a thick, squirming blood-red liquid that continuously dripped down, and it was about the size of an adult male. It was hard to imagine that a normal woman like Eileen, with no protrusion in her abdomen, would actually have such a thing hidden inside her body. How was it stored in there? Boom. The body below Eileen's had exploded completely, turning into pure flesh and blood, surging into the form of a humanoid figure, and mixing with the dripping liquid to turn into a strange red robe. The figure revealed its true appearance. It was so beautiful that it looked like a woman. The blood-red robe it wore looked like a blossoming flower under the illumination of the flames. Rose Bishop. As a veteran intelligence officer, Backlund immediately identified the name of the corresponding sequence before him. Sequence 6 of the Secret's Suppliant Pathway. Rose Bishop. Every Rose Bishop was an expert when it came to flesh and blood magic. Beyonders at this sequence could hide inside the bodies of others, thereby avoiding all sorts of investigations. But the moment they emerged, the hosts would lose their lives. For the Lord. Eileen's remaining head let out a low cry and closed her eyes forever. The Rose Bishop stretched out its right hand and tapped its chest 4 times in the order of bottom to top, right to left. With the color of blood and the light from the flames reflecting in his eyes, he looked at Backlund and took a sudden step forward with his right foot. Passing through the wall of fire, he didn't receive any damage from the fire, with only dark red liquid that continuously dripped down. Backlund retreated once again as he suddenly raised his voice. "Someone, help me!" Although his most capable assistant, Rosago, and several intelligence agents had been sent on a mission, there was still no lack of Beyonders in the embassy. They were military officials who had received permission from the Loen Kingdom. They were the defensive forces that were available. 1 Sequence 5, 1 Sequence 6, 3 Sequence 7S, and a combination of nearly 10 Sequence 8S and 9s. Backlund's voice echoed around the room, but it didn't exit the premises. The music outside didn't stop, and the ball continued. It was as though the room had become a completely isolated world. "This!" Backlund stopped his shouting, narrowed his eyes, and looked around. The Rose Bishop was in no hurry to act. He said with a chuckle, "It was by your own will. The rules that were decided by yourself. You told the guards not to disturb you, or come near, or let anyone close." "Yes. I simply magnified your will and rules, and made a slight distortion. If you want to escape this isolation, you have to defeat yourself." Backlund's expression changed slightly. What appeared to be the compliance of rules was, in fact, a distortion of them. The characteristic of using the power of authority to serve oneself made him think of another sequence's name, Baron of Corruption. Backlund growled. This was the lawyer pathway, which was Sequence 6 of the Dark Emperor pathway. Before he could finish his sentence, Backlund's face suddenly turned extremely gloomy as he blurted out. "Shepherd. You are a shepherd. Who are you from the Aurora Order, Mr. A? Why are you assassinating me?" A rose bishop, no. Shepherd chuckled. Accept the Lord's blessings. His body suddenly stiffened before he could finish his sentence. It was as though his joints were covered in rust, and he seemed to have turned into a puppet. Bakerland laughed rapturously. The gloominess from before disappeared in an instant. He took out a white handkerchief from his left breast pocket and wiped the corner of his mouth. I am glad that you were able to chat with me for so long. It gave me enough time. After the white handkerchief was taken away, a thumb-sized head emerged from his left breast pocket. It was the head of a puppet with completely black eyes. The shepherd opened his mouth and was about to speak when he heard a hollow voice that seemed to come from afar. After pausing, his body suddenly burgeoned, and his skin turned dark. Two curved goat horns with strange, sinister patterns sprouted from his head, as well as wings behind his back that reeked of sulfur when they flapped. The shepherd instantly moved 3 meters forward, having transformed into a devil-like creature. But even so, it was as if every one of his joints was firmly shackled. His movements were stiff and slow, and his thoughts were starting to blur. You still have the power of the devil? As expected of a shepherd. Let me send you to your lord. Without further ado, a flaming long spear with a blazing white tip materialized in the middle of Bakerland's right palm. He bent his back, about to throw the spear to pin the shepherd to the wall and burn him to ashes. Sequence 7 pyromaniac of the conspiracist pathway had the ancient name, Fire Mage. Cough, cough, cough. At that moment, Bakerland began to cough violently, coughing so hard that he felt as if he was about to spit out his heart and lungs. His flaming spear lost control from his coughing and disappeared, inch by inch. His face flushed red, and his forehead was scorching hot from his coughing fit. His influence on his enemy, that he derived from a mystical item, was lifted. The shepherd was freed from his sluggishness and returned to normal. Why do you think I was having such a long chat with you? How does severe pneumonia and an unstoppable cough feel like? The devilish face asked with the corners of his mouth hooked. Upon hearing these words, Bakerland suddenly recalled the enemy's beautiful and enchanting appearance when he first appeared. Cough! Cough! A disease! You! Cough! Cough! Kilda! Cough! 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 A demoness of affliction. The shepherd dispelled his devil-like form as his figure turned into a series of stacked afterimages. He chuckled and said, "No, I only received a gift from Saint Tenebris. I know conspiracists have all sorts of means available to them. So, I will be using my strongest ability now, so that you won't have any unnecessary hope." A book appeared before him. A translucent and blurry book. The ancient book flipped rapidly, and with a soft chant, I came, I saw, I record. As long as I have recorded it, I will be able to use it once. This is an ability that Saint Tenebris had deliberately demonstrated to me. Although I only have half of its original effect, it's still enough. The shepherd's voice turned hollow, and his body was enveloped by the darkness that spewed out from the book. He quickly turned into a small giant, about 2.3 to 2.4 meters tall. His entire body was covered in cold, black armor. At the space where his eyes should be, there were 2 glowing crimson-red blobs. The Dark Knight raised a broadsword in his hands, took a step forward, and delivered an unrelenting chop. No, why? As Bakerland tragically screamed. The layers of flames that gushed out of his body were split apart. All sorts of lights exploded and were split open, and his body was split into 2 halves. Thud! Bakerland fell to the ground. No blood came out of his massive wound. Even his soul seemed to be corroded and destroyed by the black sword that didn't seem to exist. Boom! Boom! The plumes of fire that spewed out of Bakerland's body lost control, causing the blast that shook the room and sent the glass rattling. And at that moment, the isolation that had been created by his own will vanished with his death. The shepherd didn't stop, nor did he wait for the Beyonder characteristic to appear. He restored his inconspicuous appearance and seized the opportunity before the military officials of the embassy arrived, sprinting through the layers of walls and into the darkness outside. At 15 Minsk Street, Klein paused with his right hand on the handle. He decided to throw a coin before he opened the door. Since Ian had already come, the revelation that he had seen in the dream had already happened. That meant that danger could come at any moment. While muttering the words, "The visitor outside will bring danger," Klein flicked up a quarter pence and watched it fall to his palm, its number side facing up. Negative, Klein muttered to himself as he reached for the handle. However, he didn't let his guard down. He knew that there was a mid-sequence Beyonder of the same pathway as him on the ambassador's side, Who could interfere with his divination? If it was that person, it would be normal for him to get the wrong result. It's a pity that I don't have the time or an opportunity to investigate it above the gray fog. Klein looked through the door for a moment with his spirit vision. Realizing that nothing was amiss, he opened the door and took 2 steps back. Dressed in a black and white checkered uniform, Sergeant Faxon took off his hat and said with a serious expression, "I have been sent by the higher-ups to tell you that you must be careful tonight and tomorrow. Be careful of strangers."